In late 1994, there were a series of earthquakes in southern Japan, which is not unusual in and of itself. What was unusual was the number and the severity. Instead of having 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 30 or 40 or 60, there were over 70 consecutive sequential seismic events that happened in Japan in December of 1994, and they were non-related. It wasn't like one was triggering another, was triggering another, was triggering another. They were independent, non-related events. We saw something very similar in Southern California not long ago, actually on my birthday, on June 28th, in Southern California, when 2 independent, simultaneous earthquakes were triggered at precisely the same time. Up until that time, researchers had never seen a phenomenon like that before. It had always been one triggering another. 2 of them happening at the same time within just a short distance of one another. So we're seeing unprecedented numbers and degrees of seismic activity all over the world. Bolivia in 1994. I was in Peru with a group. We had were completing a sacred journey through Lake Titicaca. And we were actually on the water in the lake when just across the Bolivian border there was an earthquake with an epicenter 400 miles beneath the surface of our planet. 400 miles. We didn't feel that earthquake, and we were just a few miles away in the water. Where they felt that earthquake was in North America, in Toronto and in Denver, Toronto, Canada, and in Denver, Colorado. And researchers said, why? Why didn't the people in Peru feel that earthquake? And the reason is, and what they now know, is that that earthquake was showing us something about the interior of our Earth that was very different from what we had believed in the past was the true nature of the interior of our Earth. Even if you're not aware of any of the other events we're speaking about, you do not have to look very far to see nearly every major publication within the last few years has either developed a special issue or devoted a large portion of a regular issue to unusual phenomenon. Time magazine did a beautiful expose on the vanishing of the ozone layers. What this article is actually saying, it was in part a research project through NASA. What they discovered was that the ozone was disappearing much more rapidly than they had ever suspected. And even before the research was finished, Time went to press with this article, a fascinating article, and I'll share some perspectives with you on why this may not be such a bad thing that's happening. It's a little bit different viewpoint of what's happening with here with the ozone. Scientific American, Science News, all of them are talking to science and tech journals about global patterns of weather changing. Some of them say that we're warming up, the greenhouse effect. Some say that we're cooling down, moving into a new ice age. Which is it, one or the other? The new diseases, the new viruses. Why is it now, within the last few years, just before the close of this grand cycle of experience, why is it that we're seeing unprecedented numbers of viruses? HIV, for example, we had the HIV virus. Our bodies didn't know what to do with. And now we have HIV-1 look-alike, HIV-2 look-alike, HIV-3, 4, 5 look-alike. The hantavirus, first found in the Four Corners area of northern New Mexico. Old viruses that we believed were cured, such as polio, now coming back with a vengeance. The antibiotics and the materials that we developed, the chemicals that we developed, we believe to cure these viruses, the viruses like them now. They're coming back and they're coming back with a vengeance. Why is this happening? Why is it happening now? What does it mean to you? What does it have to do with everything else that we're talking about here? Planets heating up in our solar system, unprecedented numbers of earthquakes in our planet. Well, in addition to those phenomenon, we have some even more beautiful phenomenon, I believe, and pretty outrageous at the same time. Phenomenon to look at, crop circles. Crop circles first appeared in numbers, in large numbers, mid-1970s, 75, 76, right around in there. And for those of you that may not be familiar with the crop circles, I'll review them just briefly. They were simply circles, patterns, in cereal grain crops in nearly every crop-producing country in the world, where the stalks of grain in an authentic crop circle where they are gently bent at a 51-degree angle. They are still alive. They still produce their fruit. They may still be harvested if they're done early enough in their season. Researchers have discovered that samples of grains taken from within the crop circles are very different from the control samples that are taken outside of the circle. For example, the crystalline structure is different within the circle than it is from outside the circle. Seeds that are grown from within, samples taken from within this crop circle, germinate very quickly. They bud very quickly, and they produce more berries per unit than those taken from outside of the circle. There certainly are crop circles and glyphs that are hoaxed, and they do not produce the same phenomenon. They are not gently bent at a 51-degree angle. The stalks are actually broken on those. So in the mid-1970s, we began to see an increasing number of, at first they were circles, and the researchers were quick to say they're either hoaxed or they're natural phenomenon. They're just wind whipping these crops into vortices. Well, we began to see things like this. And I put this slide in here so that you could see the detail, the interwoven nature of the stalks. It's pretty difficult to hoax something like this, and especially over glyphs that are 200 and 300 yards in diameter. An interesting side note, in 1994, for the first time, we've never found any animals that were caught up within any of these crop circles, probably because most animals, when they hear or sense whatever it is that's creating these circles, the animals run. Well, there is one particular animal that does just the opposite of that, and that is a porcupine. Porcupines, when they sense danger, they simply curl up into a ball and stay put until the danger has passed. Well, in 1994, for the first time in Canada, there were 2 porcupines whose quills were actually woven into the structure of the crop circle as it was unfolding. They were no longer living. They were very flat at that point, and their quills were very easily woven into the structure of this crop circle. To the best of my knowledge, it's the first time that's happened. So we see these complex patterns that are very difficult to hoax. Well, the simple circles began to become more and more complex. Each year, the number of circles would increase through the early 1990s, and each year there would be what was called a grand finale, the greatest, most complex, most beautiful crop circle of all. This particular image here is from 1993, I believe, and this is considered to be the grand finale of 1993. Well, the researchers that were saying we had a natural phenomenon of wind whipping these crops into vortices looked at this and they said, well, this is pretty complex. It looks very intentional. Maybe there's something else happening. In 1994, I had the opportunity to attend and present a body of information at a crop circle conference in England. And while we were there, crop circles were appearing at the rate of about 11 per day all around the area where we were at. The next slide that I'll show you is what I consider to be the grand finale of 1994. A beautiful image.